Millionaire sees twins being left at a shelter and asking for help. The truth left him speechless. Before we begin, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel. This is a story about two little boys left behind, about a man who had everything except a family, and the moment his world changed forever when he saw them being left at a shelter. It's about trust, courage, and the kind of love that isn't born, but built. So get comfortable. You're not going to forget this one. It was the kind of rain that muted the city. A steady, heavy downpour that blurred street signs, soaked through umbrellas, and made even the sharpest skyscrapers look soft around the edges. Gabriel Cole sat in the back seat of his black sedan, a silent fortress of leather and quiet jazz, as the driver Charles navigated the narrow detour roads near the Bridgegate district. Gabriel had been reviewing architectural renderings on his tablet eyes, skimming blueprints he'd seen 100 times already, when the car gave a low, uneven cough and jerked slightly. Charles muttered a curse under his breath and glanced at the dashboard, then pulled over in front of a crumbling brick building with a rusting sign that read, "Bridgegate Shelter and Community Center." Gabriel looked up, frowning, as the windshield wipers strained to keep the glass clear. "What is it?" he asked, his voice calm but clipped. Charles responded apologetically. "Engine's overheating, sir. Gauge is in the red. We'll need a few minutes at least." Gabriel exhaled slowly. He hated delays. Efficiency was the one language he respected, the rhythm that drove everything he built. He glanced at his Felipe watch. 30 minutes until the executive walkthrough at the Lakeside Tower site. "Fine," he said, reaching for the door handle. "I'll stretch my legs. Call the shop." He stepped out, rain beating instantly on his tailored coat. His shoes sank half an inch into the water pooling at the edge of the curb, and he muttered under his breath. Just his luck. Bridgegate was not on his usual path. The buildings here were old, worn. The community center across the street leaned slightly forward, as if bowed under the weight of the city's neglect. Gabriel adjusted his coat collar and walked toward the building, more to get out of the rain than from any real interest. But halfway across the street, the door burst open. A man stumbled out, dragging two small children behind him. The scene stopped Gabriel in his tracks. The man, mid-30s maybe, with a faded cap and a jacket 2 sizes too big, was yelling over his shoulder, "I told you I can't do this anymore. I'm done. I'm not your father. I never was." The two boys clung to his hands, slipping in the puddles. They were maybe 6, thin, soaking wet. One of them was crying openly. The other had his face set in a brave mask that cracked every few seconds. "Please don't leave us," the crying one, whimpered voice breaking like a twig underfoot. "We'll be good. We promise." The man swore and yanked his hand free. "Your mom's gone. I didn't sign up for this. The shelter will take you." He turned to march down the sidewalk, not looking back. "Wait," a woman's voice called from inside the shelter. "You can't just abandon children here," but the man was already vanishing into the gray curtain of rain. Gabriel's feet moved before he realized it. "Hey!" he called out sharply. "You can't just leave them in the rain." The man turned, paused, then narrowed his eyes. Recognition flickered across his face. Everyone in the city knew Gabriel Cole's face. Magazine covers, award features, keynote speeches. "Look," the man said, defensive now. "I tried, okay? I really tried. But she died, and I can't raise twins on my own. I'm not even related to them. Her sister was supposed to take them, then backed out. So I did what I could. But I'm not their dad." Gabriel looked down. The boys were now huddled together. Identical dark eyes, pale from the cold, stared up at him. One of them clutched a small blue notebook to his chest like it was the only thing keeping him upright. The other wiped his nose with a drenched sleeve and tried to stand tall. Something in Gabriel's chest shifted almost painfully. Not pity, something older, more personal. He crouched slowly despite the rain soaking into the knees of his trousers. "What are your names?" he asked quietly. The boy with the notebook whispered, "I'm Milo." The other followed, "I'm Max." Gabriel nodded, the rain running down his temples. "I'm Gabriel." Max's eyes widened slightly. Milo's fingers tightened on the notebook. "Are you the Gabriel?" he asked, his voice almost lost in the storm. Gabriel blinked. "I suppose that depends." What do you mean? But Milo just shook his head and looked down. Sandra, the shelter worker, had come outside by now, her hair plastered to her forehead, worry written across her face. "This isn't how we're supposed to do things," she said, breathless. "I need to file intake forms. Call child services. Get them inside dry safe. But we're over capacity again, and the heating's unreliable, and they're staying with me for now," Gabriel said before he had time to stop himself. Sandra blinked. "What, you heard me? I'll handle it." "Sir, with respect, you can't just take children." "Temporarily," he clarified. "Until proper arrangements are made. I'm not suggesting anything permanent." He glanced at Charles, who had returned to the car and was now watching the scene unfold through the passenger window. "Get the heat on. Open the back." Charles nodded, expression unreadable. Gabriel stood and extended a hand. Milo looked at Max. Then slowly both boys took his hand. He walked them toward the car, water squelching with every step. As they climbed into the back seat, dripping and shivering, Gabriel noticed the blue notebook again. "What's that?" he asked Milo, settling in beside them. Milo hesitated, then handed it over. "It's our dad list," he said. "Mom helped us make it. She said if we ever got lost, if anything happened, this would help us find him." Gabriel flipped it open. The pages were smudged and water damaged, but the list was clear, written in a child's careful scrawl. Number 1 knows how to make pancakes. Number 2 reads bedtime stories. Number 3 fixes things when they break. Number 4 smiles when he sees us. Number 5 his name is Gabriel. Gabriel stared at the list, heart hammering harder than it had in years. He did not cook. He had not read a bedtime story since he was a child himself, and he had not truly smiled, not with joy, not without calculation, in what felt like a decade. But number 5, that was his name. He looked at the boys. They were watching him closely, like they were waiting to see if he would pass a test. He closed the notebook gently and handed it back. "We'll figure it out," he said quietly. "One step at a time." Charles said nothing as he drove through, his eyes flicked to the rearview mirror every so often. The penthouse came into view 20 minutes later, sleek and glass-covered, a building that looked as though warmth was a foreign concept. Gabriel's home, his fortress, his vacuum. As the elevator opened into his private suite, Milo and Max stepped in cautiously, looking around like they had entered a museum. Milo touched a sculpture. Max stared at the high ceilings. "Is this where you live?" Max asked. "Yes. It's very shiny," Milo said. Gabriel smiled faintly. "It's also very quiet. But that might be about to change." He led them to the guest suite, ordering fresh towels, dry clothes, and something warm to eat through his assistant's emergency concierge service. When he returned, Milo was curled up on the couch with the blue notebook. Max was at the window, staring at the storm. "You didn't leave us," Milo said suddenly. "Everyone else did. But you didn't." Gabriel froze. For a moment he was back in a different rainstorm, a memory he never visited, a little boy standing at a gravesite, a woman walking away without looking back. He shook it off. "I didn't," he said. "And I won't. At least not until we know what's going on." Max turned. "Are you our real dad?" The question hit like a steel beam. Gabriel sat down slowly. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but I promise to find out." And in that moment, as the rain pounded on the windows and the city below faded into shadow, something new formed in the silence between them. Not yet family, not yet fate, but something like the beginning of both. Gabriel Cole had designed some of the most breathtaking buildings in the world, yet nothing in his carefully calculated career had prepared him for what it felt like to walk back into his penthouse the morning after 2 children had curled up on his living room couch. The sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows in muted streaks, casting light on evidence of a presence that did not belong in his usually pristine space. There was a trail of wet socks near the hallway, a half-eaten banana on the coffee table, and what looked like crayon scribbles on a page that had slipped from one of his design portfolios. Gabriel stood silently in the kitchen, coffee mug in hand, watching the city awaken beneath him. He had not slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Milo's trembling hands clutching that notebook, and Max's guarded stare, the kind that did not belong on a 6-year-old's face. He had called in sick for the first time in 15 years. His assistant Nico nearly choked on the other end of the call, sputtering questions before Gabriel's curt tone ended the conversation. He could not explain it. Not yet. Upstairs, muffled footsteps signaled the twins were awake. A moment later, Milo appeared at the top of the stairs, hair wild from sleep, dragging the same blue notebook like a security blanket. Max followed behind, slightly more composed, but his eyes were puffy. Gabriel set his mug down. "Morning," he said, unsure how to address children he barely knew. "Are you hungry?" Milo nodded. Max shrugged. "We can eat cereal," Milo said. "We're used to that." Gabriel opened the fridge. It was a landscape of mineral water, pre-packed salads, and glass containers labeled with dates. "Let's see if we can do better than cereal," he said. He searched a cabinet until he found a dusty box of pancake mix he could not recall buying. After struggling with instructions, cracking one egg too many, and narrowly avoiding a disaster involving a hot pan, Gabriel managed to produce lumpy but edible pancakes. He placed 3 plates on the island, and the boys climbed up on the stools. Milo smiled shyly and took a bite. Max watched Gabriel before finally digging in. "Not bad," Max said. "Could use syrup." Gabriel reached for the bottle on the counter and handed it over. "Note that down," Milo said, flipping open the notebook and carefully writing something. Gabriel leaned over. "What's that number 6, Milo said, showing the page. "Makes pancakes even if he's bad at it." Gabriel chuckled under his breath. Tough crowd. After breakfast, he sent a text to Nico. "Cancel all appointments until further notice." The reply came quickly. "Everything all right, sir?" Gabriel did not respond. Instead, he turned to the boys. "We need to talk about yesterday," he said. Max nodded. "You mean when we got left behind?" Gabriel hesitated. "Yes, and about your mom." Delilah, right? Milo's face fell, but he nodded. "She died last month. It was our birthday." Gabriel's throat tightened. "I'm sorry." "She got really sick. We stayed with a lady named Trish for a while. She was okay. But then she left. Then we ended up with Pete. He was our mom's friend, sort of. But he didn't like kids. Especially twins, Max added. Said we were too much trouble. He took us to the shelter, Milo whispered, and said someone else could figure it out. Gabriel absorbed this silently. "Did your mother ever mention me?" he asked carefully. Max shook his head. "Not to me," he said. "But Milo remembers stuff better." Milo looked unsure. Sometimes she talked about a place where she used to work, a really big building with lots of windows and models of buildings on shelves. She said there was someone named Gabriel who was kind to her. She said if anything ever happened, we should try to find him, because he helped her once when she needed it. Gabriel went very still. "Do you know where she worked? I think it was called Cole Design Group," Milo said softly. Gabriel's heart skipped. That had been the name of his firm 6 years ago before the rebrand. Delilah. A quiet young intern who had joined briefly during a crowded summer program. She had disappeared suddenly and he had barely noticed. The timing matched. A faint chill passed over his skin. He stood. "I need to make a call," he said. "You two stay here. Watch cartoons or whatever you like. There's a remote on the table." He stepped into his office and closed the door behind him. The room was lined with awards models and a view that rivaled most rooftop restaurants. But for once, none of that mattered. He dialed Nico. "I need you to look up a former intern from 6 years ago," Gabriel said. "Delilah Park. She worked in our downtown office briefly. I need everything you can find. Where she lived, if she had family, anything." Nico paused before replying. "All right. That is a bit out of the ordinary, but I will see what I can do." Discreetly, Gabriel added. "Of course." After the call, he sat back and stared at the ceiling. His memory of Delilah was vague, quiet, observant. Someone who always stayed behind after meetings to clean up notes. He had once praised her for catching an error in a structural model no one else had noticed. He did not remember anything beyond that. But apparently she remembered him. Outside, the boys had found the cartoon channel. He watched from the doorway as Max laughed for the first time since arriving. Milo, meanwhile, had resumed drawing in the notebook. Gabriel approached slowly. "What are you working on?" "A picture," Milo said, turning it around. The sketch showed a tall man standing under an umbrella reaching out to two small figures in the rain. Gabriel stared. It was unmistakably yesterday's scene. "You're good," he said. "That looks just like me." Milo beamed. "Mom said drawing helps remember the good parts, the good." Gabriel nodded and sat beside him. "What else did she say about this?" "Gabriel. Just that if we ever met him, Milo said we'd know, because he would never let us feel invisible." That hit something deep in Gabriel's chest. He thought back to his own childhood. His mother always at charity events, his father always on planes. He had learned how to be silent in a house full of noise, how to disappear in plain sight. "You're not invisible," he said quietly. Milo smiled at that. The day passed in a quiet rhythm Gabriel had never known. He helped Max with a jigsaw puzzle. He found a dusty box of toys from when his niece used to visit. He reheated pasta. He ordered books online about parenting. That night he tucked them into the guest bed. "Do you think you'll be here tomorrow?" Max asked. "Yes," Gabriel said. "And the day after that, as long as you need me to be." Milo sat up. "Even if you're not our real dad?" Gabriel paused. Even then, when the lights were off and the house had gone still, Gabriel stood at the window again. His reflection stared back at him. Same sharp jaw, same tired eyes. But something had changed. He did not know if he was ready to be a father. He did not know if he had the right. But in the space of 24 hours, two small boys had made him see the world in a new way. And he was not ready to let them go. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Gabriel Cole had faced zoning boards, architectural disasters, and a fire that nearly destroyed one of his most iconic hotels. But nothing made him as tense as the moment he walked into Bridgegate Community Shelter the next morning with Max and Milo at his side. The boys clung to the sleeves of his coat as if they might disappear if they let go. Gabriel was not sure what he expected when he pushed through the creaky glass doors. Maybe judgment. Maybe bureaucracy. What he did not expect was the warmth that greeted him. Sandra Park, the shelter worker from the day before, looked up from a stack of donation forms behind the reception desk and blinked in surprise. She adjusted her glasses and walked quickly over. "Mr. Cole," she said, brushing her damp hands on her pants. "I wasn't expecting to see you back so soon. The boys they all right?" Gabriel nodded, one hand resting lightly on Milo's back. "They're fine. I brought them back for the intake forms and anything else you need officially documented. I also want to talk about their mother." Sandra's eyes softened. "Of course. Come with me." They followed her down a narrow hallway lined with cork boards filled with paper stars, local support flyers, and coloring pages from children who had passed through. They entered a small office that smelled faintly of instant coffee and worn carpet. "Take a seat," Sandra said. Max and Milo climbed into two chairs across from her desk, and Gabriel sat between them. "I appreciate you stepping in yesterday," she began, pulling out a manila folder and flipping it open. "Not everyone would, especially someone in your position." Gabriel did not respond. He had never cared much for praise, especially not when he did not know if what he was doing was right. "Their mother's name was Delilah Park Sandra," said her voice shifting into a softer cadence. "Passed away about a month ago. Cancer. She tried to fight it, but didn't make it through the last round of treatment. No family stepped forward to claim the boys. Their case was passed from social services to temporary placements, none of which lasted. The last man, Pete, he wasn't related. Just someone she had trusted once. He abandoned them," Gabriel said flatly. "In the rain." Sandra sighed. "Yes. And unfortunately, it's not the first time something like that has happened. We're supposed to be a last resort, but lately we've been the only resort. We're full, underfunded, overwhelmed." She looked at the boys who were now quietly studying a small toy on her desk, but these two, They've handled more instability in 6 weeks than most adults face in a year, and still, they're holding on. Gabriel felt the weight of that. Did Delilah ever leave any documents? Notes about who their father might be? Sandra hesitated. There's no birth certificate on file listing a father. She never shared much about her past. But she did leave this. She reached into the folder and pulled out a sealed envelope. The boys' names were written in neat script across the front. Milo and Max. Gabriel leaned forward. "May I?" Sandra handed it to him. He turned it over. The seal was intact. "I think she wanted them to have it when the time was right," Sandra said. "It's your call." Gabriel glanced at the twins. "Would you like to read it now?" The boys looked at each other. Max nodded. Milo whispered, "Yes." Gabriel opened the envelope carefully and unfolded the letter inside. The handwriting was elegant and steady. He cleared his throat and began to read aloud. "My dearest Milo and Max, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer there to tuck you in at night or sing to you when you have bad dreams. It means my time with you was shorter than I hoped, but I want you to know something with all your hearts. You were my joy, my reason to fight, and I love you more than I ever knew was possible." Gabriel paused. His throat tightened unexpectedly. Milo took his hand. He kept reading. "I always told you that someday if things got hard, you should find someone named Gabriel. You probably thought I meant an angel. Maybe I did. But also, I meant a man who showed me kindness when I was young, alone and scared. A man who saw me when I thought I was invisible. His name is Gabriel Cole. I worked for him briefly. He may not remember me, but if he ever reads this, I want him to know that I trusted him. And if by some miracle he is in your life now, then I was right to trust him. Gabriel, if you are reading this, thank you for seeing me, and for whatever part you might play in the lives of my boys. They are good, they are brave, and they need someone to believe in them. All my love, always. Delilah." Gabriel sat in stunned silence for a long moment. The room felt heavy and yet still. Max leaned his head against Gabriel's shoulder. Milo sniffled and wiped his eyes with his sleeve. Sandra was quiet behind her desk, giving them space. "She really did know you," Milo said softly. "I guess she did," Gabriel replied. He folded the letter carefully and placed it back into the envelope. Sandra cleared her throat gently. "I know this is a lot, but we still have to figure out what happens next. The boys are legally wards of the state at the moment. If you're interested in pursuing temporary guardianship, we can start that process today. But it will require background checks, home visits, approval from family court." "I want to begin," Gabriel said. "Right away." Sandra nodded. "All right. I'll get the paperwork started. You'll need to be listed as a foster applicant first, then we can petition for temporary custody pending full approval. Do you have any prior experience with children?" "No," Gabriel admitted. "But I'm learning." They spent the next hour filling out forms, answering questions, and scheduling a home inspection. The boys sat patiently through most of it, occasionally coloring in Sandra's stack of outdated activity books. When they left the shelter, the rain had stopped and the sky had begun to clear. In the back of the car, Max asked, "Does this mean we live with you now?" Gabriel looked at them in the rearview mirror. "It means we're starting the process of making it official. It's not done yet. But we're on the way. Can we still call you?" Gabriel Milo asked. Gabriel smiled. "You can call me whatever you're comfortable with," Milo thought for a moment. "What about Mr. Gabriel?" "That works," Gabriel said. When they returned to the penthouse, Gabriel found Nico waiting in the lobby. His young assistant looked like he had sprinted across the city. Sir Nico said, falling into step beside him. "I found her file. Delilah Park, interned in summer session 6 years ago. Assigned to your team for a special green infrastructure project. She was noted as talented. Left unexpectedly in the last week of August." Gabriel nodded. "Any emergency contact listed?" "None. Her apartment was a sublet. no forwarding address. But there's one interesting detail. She was photographed at the company's summer mixer. You're in the photo with her. Gabriel raised an eyebrow. I need to see it. Nico handed over his tablet. The screen showed a photo of young interns at a rooftop event. And there she was. Delilah. Brown hair, pulled back, eyes shy but bright, standing next to him, smiling. He had his arm loosely around her shoulder. He remembered now. A last-minute group photo. He had thought she was quiet, thoughtful. He had no idea she had carried that moment with her for so long. He looked down at the twins beside him. There were still so many questions, but one thing was becoming very clear. Delilah had believed in him, trusted him with the most important thing in her life, and now that responsibility rested with him, not because of obligation, but because of choice. That night after dinner and a movie and another attempt at bedtime stories, Max whispered to him in the dark, I think Mom was right. Gabriel tucked the blanket around them both. About what that you were the one. Gabriel looked at him, voice low. Do you believe that? Max nodded. I think you're already on the list, even if we don't know what comes next. Gabriel sat beside the bed long after they had drifted to sleep, watching, thinking, hoping, and finally quietly promising. Whatever came next, they would not face it alone. Not ever again. The next week brought a routine Gabriel had not expected but quickly began to adapt to. Each morning began earlier than he preferred, usually with the sound of tiny footsteps thumping down the hallway and a voice asking if it was time for pancakes yet. The mornings were chaotic, filled with cereal spills, mismatched socks, and arguments over which cartoon theme song should play louder. But they were real. And they were his, now at least in spirit, if not yet by law. By midweek, the court had granted Gabriel provisional temporary guardianship, while his formal foster parent application was processed. The social worker, a sharp-eyed woman named Helena Russo, conducted a surprise home visit that turned out smoother than Gabriel expected. Helena had walked through his pristine penthouse, inspecting the twin guest bedrooms now filled with colorful bedspreads, stuffed animals, and school supplies. She asked Max what he liked best about living here, and he answered without hesitation, the pancakes. And that he always shows up, Milo added. And he listens. Not like some grown-ups. Helena had scribbled her notes and offered a small smile. That Friday afternoon, Gabriel received a call from Nico. Sir, you asked me to keep an eye out for anything suspicious related to Delilah Park's past. Well, I found something. Gabriel stood at the kitchen counter helping Max cut up apple slices. Go on. There's a woman named Jenna Blake who filed a private petition with the family court 3 weeks ago. She's trying to gain custody of Milo and Max. Claims to have been a friend of their mother. Gabriel's grip on the knife tightened. What do we know about her? She runs a private agency that operates under the name Future Families, but it's not a typical nonprofit. No state funding, no public record of foster placements. It's a privately held entity that works with, how shall I put this, wealthy clients seeking discreet adoptions. Gabriel's voice dropped. She tried to buy them. It looks that way, Nico said. And Delilah refused. We found a letter Delilah wrote to a legal advisor before she passed. It states explicitly that she did not want Jenna Blake involved in her children's lives. Gabriel took a breath. Get me everything, and let Helena know. I want this documented. That evening, while the boys were playing a board game in the living room, Gabriel reviewed the documents Nico had assembled. There was a copy of the court filing an affidavit from Jenna, and a financial disclosure that showed she had offered a substantial donation to the shelter before the boys arrived. The timing was deliberate. The intent was clear. Gabriel stared at the photograph of Jenna included in the file. Blonde, polished, professionally dressed. The kind of woman who smiled with her mouth but never with her eyes. She had no legal claim to the boys, but she had money. And in the wrong court, money could mean everything. The next day, a letter arrived. It was delivered by courier and sealed in an envelope with gold trim. Gabriel opened it and scanned the message. Jenna Blake requested a meeting. She wished to discuss the future of Milo and Max in a calm and civilized manner. She had suggested a neutral location, a quiet cafe downtown. He stared at the letter for several minutes before picking up his phone and calling Nico. Set up the meeting. I want to see what she has to say. That Sunday morning, Gabriel arrived at the cafe wearing a simple button-down shirt and slacks. He had left the boys at home with Mrs. Avila, the retired nanny he had called in for temporary help. The cafe was nearly empty, and Jenna was already seated sipping something from a delicate porcelain cup. She looked up and smiled as he approached. "Gabriel," she said smoothly, standing to greet him. "It's good to meet you in person." "I can't say the same," he replied, sitting across from her. Jenna did not flinch. "I understand this must be confusing for you. Unexpected, but I assure you I only want what's best for the children. Delilah did not want you near them." She raised one eyebrow. Delilah was emotional. She made a lot of poor decisions near the end. Gabriel leaned forward. "One of her best decisions was keeping them away from you." Jenna's smile faltered just slightly. "Gabriel, you're a powerful man, respected, influential. Surely you see the bigger picture. Those boys deserve a life of stability and privilege. I can provide that. They have that with me. You are not their father." "No, but I am the man their mother trusted." Jenna folded her hands. "You have no biological tie to them. The court may give you temporary guardianship, but it won't last. I have means. I have legal teams. And I have evidence," Gabriel said, sliding a copy of Delilah's letter across the table. "She named me, not you." Jenna's eyes narrowed as she read. "This letter is emotional, sentimental. It doesn't carry legal weight." "Maybe not," Gabriel said. "But the boys do, and they've already said they want to stay with me." "Children are malleable," she said. "They'll forget." Gabriel stood. "You just made a mistake, Miss Blake. You think this is about influence, but it's about belonging. And no amount of money changes what Delilah wrote or what the boys feel." As he turned to leave, Jenna's voice followed him. "You'll regret this, Gabriel. You can't protect them forever." He walked out without responding. That night, Gabriel sat beside Milo and Max as they built a spaceship out of building blocks. Milo glanced up and said, "Did you meet her?" "Yes," Gabriel replied. "She was Mom's friend, but not a good one." Max said, "I know. Is she trying to take us away?" Milo asked. Gabriel looked at both of them. "She's trying. But she won't win." Milo nodded and handed him a piece for the spaceship. "Good, because we still have a lot left to build." The next morning, Gabriel met with Helena and turned over everything: Jenna's letter, the documentation from Nico, and Delilah's private letter. Helena listened, her sharp pen gliding across the paper. "She'll fight hard," Helena said. "But we have more than a case. We have motive, and more importantly, we have the boys' testimony." "We're not going to lose them," Gabriel said. Helena looked up. "You're not just protecting them anymore. You're becoming their home." Later that day, Gabriel returned to the penthouse to find Milo sitting at the kitchen counter with his blue notebook. He was adding a new page. "What's that one say?" Gabriel asked. Milo smiled. "Number 7. He fights for us, even when it's hard." Gabriel rested a hand on his shoulder. "That's what families do." And for the first time, the word did not feel foreign on his tongue. It felt right. It felt earned. Gabriel Cole had always believed life could be controlled through precision planning and well-executed design. His buildings reflected that belief, every steel beam measured, every glass panel calibrated. But no blueprint had prepared him for the unpredictable rhythm of raising children, especially 2 bright and wounded 6-year-old boys who had already seen more abandonment than most adults. Yet over the weeks that followed, Gabriel found himself changing in ways he never anticipated. His mornings no longer began with silence and email alerts, but with sleepy footsteps and cereal poured too high into bowls. His once sterile penthouse now had a warm chaos to it. A pair of sneakers left by the elevator, marker drawings taped to the kitchen wall, 2 toothbrushes resting side by side in the guest bathroom, which had quickly become the boys' domain. The legal process was moving forward slowly but steadily. Helena Russo, the family court liaison assigned to his case, had submitted the first phase of his guardianship petition. Court dates were scheduled. Evaluators had begun to make regular visits. And Milo and Max, against all odds, were thriving. Their school enrollment was finalized with the help of a generous donation Gabriel made to the district's overcrowded arts program. He insisted it was unrelated, but the timing was too perfect to ignore. Milo took to his art class with the same quiet intensity he once reserved for his blue notebook, while Max discovered a love of books and quickly earned a reputation for asking tough questions that even his teacher struggled to answer. Still beneath their progress, Gabriel could sense something was unsettled. It surfaced in the small things. Milo would glance over his shoulder too often, like someone was always watching. Max had stopped drawing certain things altogether. He refused to use the color gold, which Gabriel would not have noticed if he had not found a crushed crayon in the trash. And then there was the whispering. Late one Thursday evening, Gabriel stood just outside their bedroom door and listened. The boys were supposed to be asleep, but their voices floated into the hallway in soft, urgent tones. "What if she comes back?" Max asked. "What if she says we have to go with her?" "She can't," Milo replied. "Gabriel said so. He's fighting. But what if the court believes her? What if they don't believe us?" There was a long pause. "Then we run," Milo said. "Just like Mom said. If something feels wrong, we run." Gabriel's heart clenched. He stepped away from the door before they could hear the floor creak beneath him. That night, he sat in his study with a photograph of Delilah in his hand. Nico had recovered it from an old employee archive, a candid shot taken during a site visit. Her smile shy as she stood beside a model of a green-roofed building. She had been 22 at the time, quiet, brilliant, and scared. He had missed so much. He had never asked where she went when she left, never thought to follow up when she disappeared. Now he wondered how different her life might have been if he had. The next day brought a new storm. Helena called just before noon. "Gabriel, we have a situation," she said. "Jenna Blake has submitted a motion to the court, claiming that you are interfering with a pending private custody agreement." Gabriel was standing in his office, the skyline of the city stretched behind him like a sea of glass and ambition. He gripped the edge of his desk. Interfering. How she's claiming that Delilah had previously agreed to place the boys through Jenna's agency, and that you have stepped in without legal standing to disrupt that placement. She attached a signed application from Delilah dated 6 months before her death. "That's impossible," Gabriel said. "Delilah's letter clearly stated her wishes. She named me." "I know," Helena replied. "But in the eyes of the court, documentation is everything. We need to verify the authenticity of that signature. If she forged it, and we can prove that, we can get the motion thrown out. But if the judge believes it's real..." Gabriel closed his eyes. "What do you need from me? Time and access. We need to review everything we have on Delilah's final months. Letters, emails, anything. And we need to talk to the boys again. Carefully." Gabriel hung up the phone and immediately called Nico. "Get me everything you can on Jenna Blake's agency. Financials, past cases, anything that shows she's not what she claims to be." Nico replied without hesitation. "Already ahead of you, sir. There are some questionable items. I'll bring the report by this afternoon." That evening, Gabriel sat the boys down at the kitchen table. The sun had dipped below the buildings outside, casting a golden hue through the windows. They were finishing dinner spaghetti with too much parmesan and garlic bread that had been slightly burned. "There's something I want to talk to you about." Gabriel began. "You remember Jenna Blake, right?" Max nodded slowly. "The lady with shiny shoes. She's trying to tell the court that your mom wanted her to take care of you. She even gave them papers. But I think they're fake. I think she's lying." Milo's eyes darkened. "She always wanted to take us away." "She came once when Mom was in the hospital," Max added. "I remember. She said she could give us a better life. Mom got really mad." Gabriel leaned in. "Do you remember if your mom said anything specific about her? Anything she might have written down or left behind?" Milo reached for his notebook. He flipped through the pages and found one that had been marked with a sticker of a tree. It was a letter carefully taped inside, written in blue ink and smudged at the edges. "She wrote this after that day," Milo said. "Said if anything happened to her, we should show it to someone we trust." Gabriel read the note carefully. It was addressed simply and clearly, written by a mother in fear. The last line caught his eye. I have made mistakes, but Jenna is not the answer. She wants to own them, not raise them. If I am not here, let them go to someone who sees them as more than a promise. Gabriel swallowed hard and closed the notebook. You've already done more than most grown-ups could. Thank you. The next morning, Helena met Gabriel in his office with a handwriting analyst in tow. After comparing Delilah's confirmed signature on the letter with the one on Jenna's court document, the expert issued a preliminary report stating the two samples were inconsistent. But it was not definitive. They needed more. That afternoon, Nico arrived with a folder thick with records. Turns out Future Families has settled out of court more than once, he said. Confidential agreements, former clients, a few complaints that never reached trial. She's clever, but there's a pattern. Bring it to the judge, Gabriel said. We need everything on the table. The emergency hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Gabriel dressed in a navy suit, the same one he wore to his brother's funeral years ago. The boys sat in the back of the courtroom beside Helena, hands folded in their laps, Milo clutching his blue notebook tightly. Jenna Blake entered with a polished legal team and an air of serene confidence. But confidence cracked under truth. Helena presented Delilah's handwritten letter, the note from the notebook, and the handwriting analysis. Nico's records followed, detailing the quiet settlements and suspicious donations. By the time Gabriel was called to testify, the courtroom was already shifting. He spoke plainly about the day he found the boys, about Delilah's intern work, about the promise he made to protect them. When Jenna's lawyer tried to discredit him, asking if he had any real connection to the boys, Gabriel reached into his coat and pulled out the blue notebook. He opened it to the latest page. Number 8. Keeps his promises. I may not be their blood, Gabriel said, but I am their shelter, their stability, their home, and I will not walk away. When the hearing concluded, the judge requested a recess. It would take another day for a decision. But as Gabriel exited the courtroom, Max grabbed his hand. Do we have to go with her? Gabriel knelt. Not if I can help it. Milo tugged at his sleeve. Then add this to the list. Number 9. He doesn't give up. That night, Gabriel sat at the edge of their bed while they slept. He looked at the notebook lying open on the floor and smiled. He was not a father by birth. He had not planned for this life, but it had chosen him. And for once, he was exactly where he needed to be. The morning of the judge's final ruling arrived with a gray, washed-out sky and a chill that clung to the windows of Gabriel Cole's penthouse like breath on glass. The city below had already begun to stir traffic, rumbling over wet asphalt, people moving briskly under umbrellas and awnings. But inside the penthouse, time moved slower, more cautiously. Milo and Max sat at the kitchen island, unusually quiet for a school morning. Milo pushed cereal around his bowl with his spoon, while Max stared at a cartoon without really watching it. Gabriel stood at the stove, pretending to focus on a pan of scrambled eggs. The boys had asked no questions, but their silence spoke volumes. They knew what today meant. Gabriel plated the eggs and set them on the counter, but neither boy reached for their forks. He leaned against the counter across from them. No matter what happens in court today, I want you both to remember something, he said. You are not going back with her. Not now, not ever. You belong here. This is your home. And I am not walking away. Max looked up first, his voice quiet. But what if the judge doesn't believe us? Gabriel reached across the counter and gently tapped the blue notebook resting beside Milo's bowl. Then we give him the list. Milo looked confused. You mean, show him what we wrote? Gabriel nodded. The list you made is more than just drawings and wishes. It's your voice. And today, if you're comfortable, I want you to let the court hear it. Milo blinked slowly, then nodded. Max reached into his backpack and tucked the notebook carefully inside. We'll bring it, he said. The courtroom that afternoon was smaller than Gabriel remembered. Wooden benches lined with somber faces, white walls stained slightly with age, and a judge's bench that felt like it sat 10 feet above the floor. Judge Hollis was a middle-aged man with silver at his temples and the tired eyes of someone who had seen too many families pulled apart by technicalities. He sat with a quiet gravity that commanded the room. Jenna Blake was already seated with her legal team wearing a dark green dress and a silk scarf. She looked every inch the part she wanted to play: composed, elegant, controlled. But when Gabriel entered the room with Max and Milo on either side of him, he saw her jaw tighten just slightly. It was the only crack she allowed. The proceedings began with Helena presenting the final documents: the letter from Delilah, the pages from the notebook, the testimony from the shelter. Then came the evidence Nico had uncovered about Jenna's unlicensed agency, the legal settlements, and the attempt to purchase custody in private. Jenna's attorney objected multiple times, but Judge Hollis overruled them with calm efficiency. When it was Gabriel's turn to speak, he stood slowly and faced the judge. "Your Honor," he began, "I did not seek out these boys. They found me quite literally on a rainy day outside a shelter I had no reason to ever visit. But from the moment I saw them wet, scared, and abandoned, I felt something I had never felt before. Not pity, not charity, a sense of responsibility. Like someone had left something precious at my feet and dared me not to pick it up." He took a breath and looked at Max and Milo. "I have spent my life building things. Towers, hotels, schools, but none of it compares to what I have built with them. They are not projects. They are not charity cases. They are my family. Maybe not by blood, but by every other measure that matters." He turned toward the judge again. "I am asking the court to recognize what we already know, that they belong with me, that Delilah Park trusted me to do what she could not finish, and that love, real love, does not come with a signature or a contract. It comes with showing up every single day." The judge nodded slowly. "Thank you, Mr. Cole." Gabriel returned to his seat. Judge Hollis leaned forward. "I would like to hear from the children if they are willing. Milo, Max, would you be comfortable speaking to the court today?" Max looked at Milo. Milo gave a slight nod. The court clerk brought them a step stool so they could reach the microphone. Milo stood on it first, clutching his notebook. His voice was soft but clear. "My mom said that if we ever needed help, we should find someone named Gabriel. Not because he was rich, not because he had a big house, but because he would never make us feel invisible." He opened the notebook and turned it so the judge could see the pages. "We made a list, a dad list, of things a good dad does, and Gabriel has done every single one." He pointed to the last page. "Even number 9, he never gives up." Max stepped beside him. "She said Jenna was not supposed to have us. She said Jenna wanted to take us away, and we don't want to go. We feel safe now, and we're not afraid to sleep anymore. That's because of Gabriel." Judge Hollis looked at them for a long moment, then at the notebook, then back to Gabriel. "I have heard enough," he said quietly. "This court finds that the best interest of the children lies with the petitioner. Full legal guardianship is hereby granted to Gabriel Cole. The petition of Jenna Blake is denied." The gavel hit the wood with a soft finality. The courtroom erupted into murmurs. Milo burst into tears and clung to Gabriel's waist. Max grinned through his own tears. Gabriel knelt and held them both tightly, overwhelmed by a rush of emotion he had not felt since he was a boy. Jenna stood to leave, but not before offering a final glance toward Gabriel. Her face betrayed no anger this time, only resignation. She adjusted her scarf and disappeared through the double doors. That evening they returned to the penthouse to find it filled with balloons and streamers. Nico and Mrs. Avila had coordinated a small celebration with cupcakes and music and a banner that read, "Welcome home forever." The boys ran through the halls, laughing their joy, echoing off the high ceilings that no longer felt so empty. Gabriel stood in the center of it all, watching them, feeling something new settle deep in his chest. A sense of peace, of belonging, of having made the right choice even when it had been hard. Later that night, after the cupcakes were gone and the last of the balloons floated lazily against the ceiling, Gabriel tucked the boys into bed. Milo looked up at him sleepily. What happens now? Gabriel brushed the hair back from his forehead. Now we live. Now we build our family. One day at a time. Max pulled the blue notebook from the nightstand and added one last line to the page. Number 10. He makes us feel like we were always meant to be his. Gabriel closed the notebook gently and kissed their foreheads. And you were? He whispered. That night, for the first time in years, Gabriel slept through the night. Not alone, not empty, but whole. And in the quiet of the dark, a new chapter began, not written in contracts or blueprints, but in laughter and love, and in the kind of family that is chosen and cherished every single day. Gabriel Cole's penthouse had never felt like a home until the sound of laughter started bouncing off the marble floors and glass walls. A month had passed since the court ruling. A month since the gavel dropped and declared what Gabriel already knew to be true. Milo and Max were his family, officially, permanently, forever. And in that time, life had shifted in ways that could never be undone. There was no going back to the man he had been before he met them. He had not just taken in 2 boys, he had taken in purpose, love, a reason to look up from his blueprints and into the messy, unpredictable, beautiful chaos of life. Each morning began with footsteps racing down the hallway, followed by a debate over who got to press the elevator button first on the way to school. Gabriel now scheduled his meetings around breakfast and made it a rule never to miss pickup time, unless there was a crisis he could not avoid. Max had started writing stories in class. He brought home folded pieces of paper covered in pencil marks and proudly read them aloud at dinner. Milo had joined the art club. His sketches had become more detailed, more confident, and were starting to cover the fridge. Gabriel had even framed one and placed it in his office right next to a model of his latest skyscraper project. A small drawing of 3 stick figures standing under an umbrella. 1 tall, 2 small, all smiling. One Friday morning, as Gabriel zipped up Max's jacket by the front door, Milo stood quietly holding his blue notebook. He had not added to it in a while, and Gabriel assumed the list was complete. But Milo tapped the cover thoughtfully and said, "I think we need to start a new list." Gabriel raised an eyebrow. "A new one? What for?" "The future list," Milo said, "now that we know we're staying." Gabriel smiled and opened the notebook to a fresh page. "All right. What's number 1?" Max jumped in. "Take a vacation." Gabriel blinked. "You just had winter break." "Not school vacation," Max said. "A real one, like to the beach, or mountains, somewhere we all go together." Milo added, "Someplace Mom always wanted to go." Gabriel nodded slowly. "Okay, that sounds fair. We'll plan something." "And number 2," Milo continued, "is to plant a garden." "A garden," Gabriel repeated, glancing around the steel and glass skyline surrounding their penthouse. "We live on the 43rd floor. We saw a book at the library," Max said. "You can grow vegetables in boxes. On balconies." Gabriel looked at the 2 of them, eyes bright and full of ideas. "All right, a garden. Vacation and garden. What else?" The boys looked at each other, grinned, and said in unison, "Get a pet." Gabriel laughed. "Now you're just making things up." "No," Milo insisted. "Mom said if we ever had a real home again, we could get a dog." Gabriel considered this. He had never owned a pet, never saw the point in one. But then again, he had once felt the same about kids. And here he was. "We'll talk about it," he said, knowing full well they had already won. Later that day, while the boys were at school and Gabriel was reviewing construction updates in his office, Nico entered with a folder in his hand and a curious look on his face. "There's something I thought you should see," Nico said. "It's about Delilah." Gabriel's heart paused. He had not expected that name today, or ever again, not like this. He gestured to the seat across from him. Nico opened the folder and slid it forward. One of the analysts working on Jenna Blake's network uncovered this. It's an email chain between Delilah and a woman named Rachel Torres. She used to work at a women's support center in Queens. Apparently, Delilah was trying to get into a housing program. She was also trying to start a foundation, something called the Blue Umbrella Project. Gabriel stared at the name. The Blue Umbrella. It looks like she wanted to help women and children in crisis, especially single mothers who couldn't get help through traditional shelters. She wrote that no one should feel invisible. That sounds like something you said during the hearing. Gabriel felt something shift inside him. She was planning something long before she got sick. There's more, Nico said. Rachel Torres is still working at a nonprofit. She said she met the boys once. Delilah brought them in while she filled out forms. She left behind a folder full of handwritten notes and grant ideas. Rachel said if you want it, she would be happy to hand it over. Gabriel nodded slowly. Yes, I want to see it. That weekend, Gabriel drove the boys to the address Nico gave him. The community center was modest, tucked between a laundromat and a corner market. Faded paint, chain-link fence. But as they stepped inside, the warmth of the place was undeniable. Children's laughter echoed down the halls. Volunteers moved with purpose. The woman at the desk smiled brightly when she saw them. You must be Gabriel, she said. I'm Rachel. Milo and Max stood close to Gabriel as they shook hands. Rachel led them to a small office filled with books and boxes of donation supplies. She pulled out a manila folder from a drawer and handed it to Gabriel. Your name was in the notes. Delilah hoped you would help if she could not. Gabriel opened the folder. Inside were pages of handwritten plans, lists of resources, budget breakdowns, personal stories of women Delilah had met at the shelter, a mission statement written in her neat script. We see them, we hear them, and we show up every day. Gabriel's throat tightened. He closed the folder carefully. I want to do this, he said. Not just donate. I want to build this. Rachel smiled. Then we'll build it together. The following weeks moved with a new kind of momentum. Gabriel's firm began drawing up plans for a renovated space designed specifically for mothers and children in transition. He named it the Blue Umbrella Center. Milo helped design the logo. Max wrote a story that became part of the welcome brochure. Gabriel reached out to foundations, raised support, and committed the first donation himself, a large sum that made headlines but felt deeply personal. The day of the groundbreaking, Gabriel stood on a makeshift stage in front of a small crowd of community members, families, and staff. Max and Milo stood beside him, both wearing jackets too big and smiles too wide. He stepped up to the microphone and took a breath. I once believed success meant buildings with my name on them. But success is not what you build with steel and glass. It's what you build with love, with trust, with people. He looked down at the boys. This center is not about charity. It is about dignity, about seeing people before the world labels them, about keeping promises. And today, we keep one of Delilah's. The crowd applauded. Rachel stepped forward with a blue umbrella and opened it over their heads, even though the sky was clear. The symbol was simple, but its meaning was profound. Shelter, belonging, protection. As the ceremony wrapped up and people began to mingle, Max turned to Milo and whispered, "What should we write for number 4 on the future list?" Milo opened the notebook, thought for a moment, then wrote carefully, "Number 4, finish what Mom started." And Gabriel, standing a few feet away, saw it. Not just the words, but the future forming in front of him. One list, one boy, one dream at a time. It had been nearly 6 months since Gabriel Cole had taken full guardianship of Milo and Max, but time seemed to ripple differently now, marked not by corporate milestones or quarterly reports, but by science fairs, spelling tests, and bedtime stories. And though he still wore suits and ran meetings and signed contracts, the rhythm of his life had changed. He no longer measured his worth in skyline silhouettes or billion-dollar projections, but in quiet victories, the kind that came with lunchboxes packed on time and 2 little boys laughing in the backseat of his car on the way to school. The Blue Umbrella Center was coming together faster than expected. Gabriel visited the construction site twice a week, walking alongside the architects, checking the progress with a clipboard in hand and a deeply personal sense of purpose in his chest. On one of those mornings, Milo handed him a drawing he had made in class. It was a picture of the center complete with bright windows, flower beds, and people smiling under a big blue umbrella. At the bottom, written in blocky, determined handwriting, were the words, "A place where no one feels alone." Gabriel carried that drawing with him into every meeting. Still, even as the center rose from the ground and his relationship with the boys deepened, something quiet nagged at the edges of his mind. It came late at night when the penthouse was silent except for the gentle hum of the city outside. It came when he found Max watching an old video of their mother singing to them, or when Milo sat staring at the sky with that faraway look in his eyes. The boys were thriving, yes, but they were also healing. And healing came in waves, sometimes calm, sometimes sudden, sometimes overwhelming. One evening after dinner, Max pushed his plate away and asked a question that caught Gabriel off guard. "Do you think Mom's proud of us?" Gabriel looked across the table at him. Max's face was calm, but his eyes carried the weight of something deeper. "I think," Gabriel said slowly, "that your mother was proud of you from the moment she first held you. And I think if she could see you now, she would be even prouder, because of how brave you are, how kind, how smart," Milo added. "And because we finished her list." Gabriel smiled gently. "You didn't just finish it. You expanded it. You made it bigger than she ever imagined. And that's something to be proud of." A pause settled in the room before Max spoke again. "Can we visit her grave sometime?" Gabriel felt the question settle in his chest like a stone. The boys had not asked before. They had only mentioned her in memories and bedtime prayers in the stories they kept tucked inside. But now it seemed they were ready. "Of course," he said. "We can go this weekend." So on Saturday morning, they drove 2 hours north to the cemetery, where Delilah had been laid to rest under a maple tree whose leaves had just started to turn gold at the tips. Gabriel had arranged for the groundskeeper to mark the site, and when they arrived, he let the boys lead the way through the headstones, the wind tugging at their jackets. The marker was simple, a polished stone engraved with her name and the dates of her short life, no grand epitaph, just a quiet line carved into the base: "Loved deeply, remembered always." Max knelt beside it and placed a small bouquet of sunflowers, her favorite, he had said. Milo pulled out a page from his notebook, folded carefully, and placed it under a small stone so the wind would not take it. Neither of them cried, but Gabriel did. He stood behind them watching and felt tears gather in his eyes, not from grief alone, but from the overwhelming beauty of that moment. Two boys standing tall in their love, facing loss with a strength that left him breathless. After a long silence, Max spoke. "Hey, Mom. It's me. Max. We're okay. Gabriel takes care of us. He even makes pancakes, from scratch, and he's really bad at tying shoelaces, but he's trying." Milo added, "And he lets us put stickers on the fridge." They both laughed softly. "We started your project," Max said. "The blue umbrella. It's real now. It's happening. And we're going to help kids who feel like we used to feel." Milo finished. Scared, invisible, but not anymore. They stood together a little longer. Then Gabriel walked up and knelt beside them. He placed a hand on each of their shoulders. "Thank you for letting me be part of her memory," he said quietly. "You're part of it now," Milo whispered. "Forever." The ride home was quiet, the kind of quiet that comes after something sacred has been shared. Gabriel stopped for ice cream on the way back, even though the weather was brisk and the boys insisted on extra sprinkles. That night, back at the penthouse, Milo added a new entry to the notebook. Number 5. Tell her we're okay. Weeks passed. The first frost dusted the city, and the garden boxes the boys had planted began to retreat into sleep for the season. They harvested the last of the herbs and tomatoes, and Gabriel helped them turn it into sauce for homemade pizza. It was messy and delightful and left flour everywhere. Then one afternoon, Nico appeared at Gabriel's office with something unexpected. A letter. "It came to the center," he explained. "Addressed to you. No return address." Gabriel opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a short note written in delicate script. "You do not know me, but I knew Delilah. I owe her everything. I heard what you did for her boys. She would have trusted no one else. If you ever need help bringing her vision to life, please contact me. I have experience in grant writing and nonprofit operations. Below was a phone number. No name, just an initial. E. Gabriel read the letter twice, then once more. Something about it struck him deeply. The quiet grace of it. The offer without obligation. The connection to Delilah that extended beyond memory and into action. He picked up his phone and called the number. A woman's voice answered. Soft. Steady. "Hello, this is Gabriel Cole," he said. "I received your letter." A pause, then a warm inhale. "I'm glad you called." They spoke for 20 minutes. Her name was Elise. She had met Delilah in a shelter years ago. They had become close. Delilah had once saved her life by refusing to let her walk away when things got dark. Elise had gone on to earn a degree work in nonprofit circles and now wanted to give back. Gabriel invited her to visit the center. They agreed on a date. When she arrived, Milo and Max were there handing out flyers for a winter coat drive. Elise was kind and attentive and listened when the boys told her about their list. She looked at Gabriel and said, "This place feels like hope." By the end of the meeting, Gabriel had offered her a job program director of the Blue Umbrella Center. She accepted with a grateful smile. And that night, as he stood on the balcony overlooking the city, the blue lights from the center glowing faintly in the distance, Gabriel realized something profound. It was no longer just about raising Milo and Max. It was about raising a world around them. A better one, a warmer one. And as the wind swept past him, he heard laughter behind him. The boys were dancing in the hallway, music playing from the kitchen. He turned and walked back inside, heart full. This was not the end of their story, not even close. This was the beginning of everything. The first snow fell quietly one early December morning, blanketing the city in soft white and frosting the windows of the Blue Umbrella Center with delicate ice. Inside, the center hummed with life. Volunteers unpacked winter coats and boots, while children clutched paper cups of hot cocoa as they worked on snowflake crafts. The front lobby, once bare and echoing, now held a small Christmas tree decorated with hand-painted ornaments made by the kids. Milo had insisted on placing a star at the top, standing on Gabriel's shoulders to reach it, while Max had created a string of paper angels and taped it along the reception desk. Gabriel Cole stood near the main entrance, watching with quiet pride. 6 months ago, this space had been an idea, a promise scribbled in the back of a notebook. Now it was alive, and the boys, his boys, were part of every inch of it. The center had become more than a shelter. It had become a heartbeat, a rhythm of safety and renewal. Gabriel had invited Elise to speak at the upcoming winter fundraising gala. Since joining the team, she had not only helped structure the programs and training, but also connected with dozens of families Delilah had once written about. Families who had slipped through cracks and now found themselves welcomed beneath the symbolic umbrella. Still, Gabriel could feel something else quietly building behind the scenes. He had learned over the years that silence often spoke the loudest. Something was shifting, and he had not yet figured out what. That afternoon, as he returned to his office overlooking the center's courtyard, Nico knocked and entered without waiting. His face was serious, his movements brisk. "You're going to want to see this," Nico said, placing a thick folder on the desk. "A lawyer showed up today. Claims he represents the estate of Delilah's mother." Gabriel's expression hardened. "I thought her mother passed years ago." "She did. But apparently before she died, she filed a document contesting the guardianship of the boys. It never made it through the courts because she died before the proceedings could begin. But now her brother and uncle the boys have never met is trying to use that to demand custody." Gabriel's stomach tightened. On what grounds? Nico opened the folder. "He's arguing biological kinship. Claims that you misled the court by not fully disclosing the extended family tree. Says the boys deserve to be raised by blood." Gabriel pushed back from his desk. The court saw every document. They ruled based on Delilah's written wishes, the boys' own testimony, and my legal standing as their guardian. This isn't about what's best for them. This is someone trying to stake a claim to something they never earned. Nico nodded. "And the timing isn't subtle. The gala's next week. Press will be there. If this leaks, it could overshadow everything. Gabriel stood. His voice was quiet but steady. Then we don't let it leak. We control the story, and we protect the boys. That evening after dinner, Gabriel sat with Milo and Max on the living room floor, a game of dominoes spread out between them. The fireplace crackled, and the boys were laughing at a ridiculous rule Max had just invented. But Gabriel could not ignore the ache in his chest. He hated the idea of bringing worry into this space, this sanctuary they had built together. Still, he had promised honesty. From the start, they had made that their foundation. "There's something I need to talk to you about," he said softly. Both boys looked up. Milo leaned in, sensing the shift. Max's smile faded slightly. Gabriel took a breath. "Someone came forward today. A man who says he's your great-uncle, your mom's uncle. He's trying to get the court to give him custody." Silence stretched across the room like a held breath. "Do we have to leave?" Max asked quietly. "No," Gabriel said firmly. "Nothing is happening yet. And if I have anything to say about it, nothing will happen at all. But I want you to know because it might show up in the news or at the center. And I want you to hear it from me first." Milo frowned. "Did Mom even talk to him?" "No," Gabriel replied. "From everything I've read, she didn't have a relationship with him. He never reached out. Never helped when she was struggling. But now with everything we've built, he wants to step in." Max picked up a domino and turned it over in his hand. "But we're not going anywhere." "Right," Gabriel reached for their hands. "Not if I can help it, and I'll do everything I can to protect that." The next morning, Gabriel's legal team began preparing a response. Nico made sure every reporter attending the gala received a carefully crafted press kit emphasizing the center's mission, the community impact, and Delilah's story. No mention of the legal claim was included, but rumors traveled fast. 2 days before the gala, a tabloid published an anonymous piece. The headline read, "Wealthy CEO may lose custody of adopted sons to blood relative." It included a blurry photo of Gabriel with the boys at the center and framed the situation as a dramatic custody battle. Gabriel was furious, not for himself, but for the boys, for their story being used as gossip fodder. Elise, who had seen similar tactics before, advised calm. "They're baiting you," she said gently. "If you respond with anger, it becomes a spectacle. But if you lead with heart, you win the room before they even ask a question." Gabriel nodded. "Then we lead with heart." The night of the gala arrived with a soft snowfall. The venue was a refurbished theater downtown decorated with lights, photographs from the center's journey, and quotes from Delilah's original notes. Milo and Max wore matching suits with little blue umbrellas pinned to their lapels. They stood proudly at the entrance greeting guests with practiced smiles and firm handshakes. As people filtered into their seats, Gabriel stepped backstage. Elise placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You ready?" she asked. "No," he said. "But I'm going anyway." When the spotlight hit the stage and Gabriel stepped forward, the room quieted instantly. He looked out at the audience, donors, press partners, and families whose lives had been touched by the center. He did not speak from a script. He spoke from memory. When I met Milo and Max, they were standing outside a shelter, cold, alone, asking for help. I had no idea who they were. I had no idea who I would become because of them. But I know now that everything I thought I was building in life meant nothing until I chose to build something with them. He paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. "They are not my blood, but they are my family. They are not my legacy. They are my future." A soft murmur of agreement swept through the crowd. "I know some of you may have read things, headlines, gossip. Let me tell you what's real. What's real is that these boys lost their mother, and the world tried to forget them. What's real is that love is not measured by DNA. It's measured by who shows up, who stays, who builds something better together." The audience stood clapping, some wiping tears. Elise smiled from backstage. Later that night, as guests mingled and donations poured in, Milo and Max found Gabriel by the refreshments table. "You did good," Milo said, sliding his hand into Gabriel's. "You made everyone quiet," Max added. like when the movie's about to get to the best part. Gabriel knelt eye level with them. "We're going to be okay," he said. "You already said that," Milo replied. "I know," Gabriel said, "but sometimes it helps to hear it again." And in that moment, with the snow drifting silently outside and the center's future secured by love and defiance, Gabriel knew the truth. No headline could undo what they had built. No man could rewrite what they had become. The snow had melted slowly over the course of 2 weeks, leaving behind slushy sidewalks and the promise of spring just beneath the frost. The Blue Umbrella Center stood like a lighthouse in the quiet gray of late winter, glowing from within. Inside, laughter echoed through the halls, the hum of children's voices blending with the soft clatter of activity. Paintings now adorned the once bare walls, each one signed by a child who had found a home within those doors. Gabriel Cole moved through the center not as its benefactor, but as its beating heart. He was there every morning, sharing breakfast with Milo and Max, helping with homework in the evening, and meeting with volunteers and new families throughout the day. The gala had not just brought donations. It had brought attention. Schools, local businesses, and even city officials had begun reaching out to partner with the center, offering food drives, art programs, and legal support for displaced families. It was everything Delilah Park had once dreamed of, and more. And yet there was one more battle left to face. The court date loomed ahead like a shadow cast long before dawn. Milo and Max's great-uncle Gregory Dane had not withdrawn his claim. Despite the wave of public support that followed the gala, despite Delilah's letter, and despite the boy's own testimonies, Gregory insisted on a hearing. He had money connections and an army of lawyers. Gabriel had no illusions about what he was facing. The law did not always follow emotion. He had learned that much from his years in business. But this time, he was not fighting for a company. He was fighting for his family. On the morning of the hearing, Milo wore a navy blue sweater and sat silently at the breakfast table, staring at his bowl of oatmeal without eating. Max tugged at the sleeves of his shirt, asking if they would have to sit in a big room like in the movies. Gabriel placed a hand on each of their backs and knelt beside them. "Today is just a conversation," he said gently. "You will not be alone, and you do not have to be afraid." Max leaned into him, voice soft. "What if the judge says we have to leave?" Gabriel looked him in the eyes. "Then we will fight again, and again, until they understand. Because family is not something someone can just take." They arrived at the courthouse just before 9. Elise was already there, holding a manila folder thick with documents and affidavits. She had agreed to testify about Delilah's wishes and the boy's well-being. Helena Russo, the social worker who had guided them through every step, stood nearby reviewing her notes. Gabriel walked through the metal detectors with the boys at his side, feeling the weight of every step echo through his chest. The courtroom itself was quiet. A heavy hush lay over the polished wood and solemn walls. The judge, a silver-haired woman with clear eyes, sat with her hands folded in front of her. Gregory Dane arrived with his lawyers, a sleek entourage in dark suits carrying binders and confident smirks. The hearing began with formalities. Gregory's team argued lineage, citing their client's biological connection and a moral obligation to provide for the boys. They claimed that Gabriel had interfered in a legal process, turning Delilah's final wishes into a spectacle for his own benefit. Elise was called to the stand and answered calmly, her voice steady. She spoke of Delilah's strength, her fears, and her love for her sons. She referenced journal entries, audio recordings, and the last handwritten letter Delilah had left with her. Then Helena testified, her social worker's badge pinned firmly to her chest. She detailed the boys' emotional progress, their safety, and their bond with Gabriel. She described in clinical but heartfelt terms the difference she had seen in the boys since moving into his care. Finally, Gabriel was called forward. He stood alone in the center of the room, facing the judge. The attorney for the opposing side asked him coldly, "You are not related to these boys by blood, correct," Gabriel said. "And you met them by chance." "Not by chance," Gabriel replied. "By grace." The lawyer raised a brow. "And yet you assume the role of their parent." Why, Gabriel turned to the judge. "Because they needed someone. Because their mother asked me to. And because in every way that matters, they are my sons. I have held them through nightmares. I have listened to their fears. I have watched them heal. If biology is the only measure of family, then we fail every child without a living relative. But if love, presence, and protection count for anything, then I ask the court to consider what kind of home matters most. The room fell into a hush. Gabriel stepped down. Then the judge asked a final question. Would the children like to speak? There was a pause. Helena looked at the boys. Milo gave a small nod. Max's hand gripped Gabriel's. The judge allowed them to come forward together. They stood at the front, small in the large courtroom, and Milo cleared his throat. My name is Milo. I am 9 years old. This is my brother Max. We lived with our mom. She made us pancakes when we were scared. She read stories. But then she got sick, and we went to the shelter. That is where Gabriel found us. Max added, he gave us socks, but also jokes, and he let me tape pictures to his fridge even though they were messy. Milo looked at the judge. He never made us feel like a problem. He made us feel like we were home. The judge smiled faintly. Thank you, boys. That was very brave. They returned to their seats. Gabriel squeezed their shoulders. The judge took a recess. It was the longest 20 minutes of Gabriel's life. When the court resumed, the judge read her decision aloud. After review of all testimony, documentation, and evidence presented, this court finds that the best interest of the children is served by remaining in the guardianship of Gabriel Cole. His commitment to their well-being, emotional security, and the wishes of their late mother shall remain the guiding principles of this ruling. Petition for custody by Gregory Dane is denied. Max let out a breath. Milo's eyes filled with tears. Gabriel closed his. It was over. Outside the courtroom, news reporters waited, their microphones and flashing cameras, an overwhelming sight. But Gabriel held the boys close and walked past them without a word. They had nothing to prove. They had everything they needed. Weeks later, spring arrived. The Blue Umbrella Center opened its second wing, adding classrooms and a music room. Gabriel invited Milo and Max to paint the first stroke on the wall. They dipped their brushes in blue and swept it across the clean white surface, leaving behind more than color, leaving behind a legacy. On a quiet Saturday morning, Milo handed Gabriel his notebook. It's full, he said. Gabriel opened it. The final page read, Number 10. He became our forever. Gabriel hugged them both. Later that afternoon, they visited Delilah's grave. The boys left small paper umbrellas beside her headstone. Max whispered, We're okay now, Mom. We're safe. And as Gabriel stood with them, arms around their shoulders, he looked at the sky and whispered, Thank you. The wind was soft, the sun warm, and their family, formed not by blood but by choice, stood unshaken. Sometimes family isn't written in blood. It's written in moments of love, of sacrifice, of showing up when it matters most. Thank you for staying with us through this powerful journey. If this story touched your heart, let us know in the comments. And if you believe in second chances and love that chooses, you don't forget to like, subscribe, and click on the screen for more. Thanks for being here. See you in the next story.